And Mark, let's move into the next team, the Seattle Seahawks, which is an interesting team for this preview because usually we're talking about them being one of the teams to challenge and be one of the teams that could be the NFC West Division winners at the end of the season. But this is a year that Seattle, outside of maybe Seattle fans, a lot of us, especially you and I, not too high on the Seahawks this year. This could be a year where this Seattle team takes a step back. First thing I want to ask you about this season for the Seahawks is basically what happened this preseason where Doug Baldwin has aggravated a sore knee. He did it at the beginning of training camp and will miss the rest of camp. He's going to miss the rest of the preseason. Right now, they are reporting that he is still on track for Week 1 against the Broncos. But the question I want to ask you is, what happens to this Seahawk team if he either misses time at the beginning of the regular season or is not absolutely 100% Week 1 after aggravating his sore knee?
I mean, I'm not super worried about it, to be honest. I think he'll be fine. The problem is going to be if it becomes out Week 1, maybe it's not completely ready and then just ends up out for a much longer time because of it. But, this team is designed they don't need to pass the ball as much as other teams do. That's not how they're built. They're supposed to be a power running type of team. They've got all right wide receivers to where they can get enough done with a strong run game, with a good defense, which is what they're supposed to have. And Russell Wilson, the man knows how to extend plays. The guy knows how to run the ball on his own. He can kind of make things work. He is that missing piece to where lesser receivers can get open because of him extending plays and letting them break down. So I think they'll be all right, but I fully expect Doug Baldwin to be there Week 1.
And the reason why I'm kind of similar with you is we've talked about in our fantasy rankings, they've got tight end Vanett, who should be a good option for Russell Wilson. You look at their wide receivers also, like Lockett will be fine, slot receiver. They have Brandon Marshall, which, I mean, in the last few years, you're probably like, Ricky, are you thinking Chicago Bear Brandon Marshall? Like, that's how far you're going back? But their wide receivers should be better than what they were in years past.
Yeah, Russell Wilson's going to love having an option that he can just throw it up and let him go get it.
Let him jump up, let him go get the football, especially in the red zone. To me, the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to, especially on the offensive side of this ball, because defensively we're going to get to this team because they're a defensive-minded team, I'll say. But to me, the most important thing that I can't wait to see actually play football games and see how it works is Rashad Penny on this team, because this is a team that we remember when they were really good, like Super Bowl levels, and they lost a Super Bowl because they didn't do this on the 1-yard line. This was a team that had a power run game. This is a team that had Marshawn Lynch run it down your throat beast mode. Even when beast mode was injured or they had other running backs like Christine Michael, it was still a run game that was present. They did not have that last year. I know that CJ Prosise showed great signs and kind of showed like, a resurgence in this run game. He got injured and the run game flew out the window. They just threw out the tub with the bathwater once CJ Prosise got injured. The thing is, and the question I'll ask you is, can Rashad Penny kind of bring back that kind of momentum in the run game that this team once had and that they are lacking? Because I think that he can. It's just the question of, will he as a rookie running back?
Well, they're hoping he will, and they drafted him in the first round, which surprised many people for a reason. So they're expecting him to. The thing that they have to their advantage is Russell Wilson's always going to make other running backs better. And he's going to have enough of a good passing game to where that itself will make the running back better. They're one of the few teams that still uses fullbacks, so they are all about the power run. I think that this will kind of get back to some Marshawn Lynch days. It's not going to instantly be beast mode right off the start, but they're moving in the right direction. They're moving to where they should be.
What should we expect from them then? Because, like, the reason why I ask that is you look at just last year alone is what I'm thinking about, kind of two polar opposites, both top 10 picks. You have a guy like Leonard Fournette, top 5 pick, produces really well, team goes to the AFC Championship game. Then you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey, I know goes to a different situation, but isn't like the same. Of course, they're different backs, but doesn't have the same success that a Leonard Fournette does. What do you see? Do you see Penny maybe being more on that Leonard Fournette style?
I don't see him necessarily being Leonard Fournette because Leonard Fournette, was a monster.
Not exactly Leonard Fournette. But
I'm just saying success. Yeah,
just on I don't the sense. Yeah, of success.
I don't see him being Leonard Fournette in terms of success. I don't necessarily see him being Christian Kirk either because I don't think Christian Kirk was all that successful
Christian
last year.
McCaffrey, you mean?
Oh, Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, I'm just too used to saying Christian Kirk after the last topic.
What about like a Joe Mixon or not? Like I don't want to say Dalvin Cook because he was injured last year, but I mean, more honestly, like a Joe Mixon.
I feel like you'll get enough out of Rashad Penny to where you'll be happy, but you're not going to sit there and be like, I got to go get myself a Penny jersey right now. If you're not a Seattle Seahawks fan.
I'm only drawing comparisons here, but like, is there a chance that one of these different situation, because he's got another running back in Mark Ingram, but other third-round backs, you got Kareem Hunt that took the world by storm. You got Alvin Kamara that took the world by storm. Although they're different backs, I could see Rashad Penny maybe being the same thing to the Seahawk team that Kareem Hunt was to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, I think it's going to be nice because Penny's going to have plenty of opportunities. I mean, I don't think they're going to sit there and say, you're touching the ball every single time.
No.
But he will have to share with some of these other backs. But because it is a team that historically have been one of the fewest passing attempts in the NFL, they're going to give him opportunities. He's going to have those touches, and he's a bit of a power type of guy. So he's going to be very useful, and especially goal line situations. When we're just talking about fantasy football, he's going to get you some points. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to do so.
And it only helps him that, if he's doing well, they're getting him touches, then they can do the RPOs, they can play action with Russell Wilson and kind of use those bootlegs to try to catch the defense off guard of like, ooh, are we going to run? Are we going to throw at Russell Wilson? Then you don't know at that point.
Of course, the problem always is that their offensive line still isn't that great. I think they had one, I forgot which one, but one of their guys was leading the NFL in penalties last year, if I'm remembering right. So they had some issues, and Russell Wilson doesn't run for his life because it's fun. He runs for his life because he doesn't have a choice. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting for sure. It's an interesting thing going on in Seattle right now because this team was so amazing because they had so many players they didn't have to pay yet.
Well, and I mean,
now they're starting to pay these players, and that's what's been causing some issues for them because they've just lost a lot of those key pieces, and they're trying to build enough of a team while having to pay people.
And we're going to get to the defense in a second. Just the last thing I want to say for the rushing attack that I find interesting is the last 1,000-yard rusher that the Seahawks had. Surprise, surprise, beast mode. It was the 2014 season. He had just over 1,300 yards. 2015, I would say they had a good rushing attack. They had Thomas Rawls, who was their main back. Yeah, beast mode had 417. Christine Michael had 292, but Thomas Rawls, 830 yards that year. It was a really good, all right, we've got a guy who's at least consistent. Then you go 2016, Christine Michael, only 496, with him and Rawls kind of splitting it up. So him and Rawls equaled that 800 together, where Russell Wilson had less rushing yards. But then last year, where it's like, Mike Davis is your main. Mike Davis had 240. Chris Carson had 208. Eddie Lacy was damn near non-existent. Like I said, C.J. Prosise got injured. And Russell Wilson led the team in rushing with 586 rushing yards and had the most. He had 4 of the team's 12 rushes over 20 yards last year.
Yeah.
That is what this team cannot have if they want success, but kind of moving on into kind of what you were mentioning, where this is a team that had to start paying young players, mostly on the defensive side, and that's why we've seen this team kind of have to negotiate with those older players, why we see Richard Sherman have left the team. He's now in San Francisco. But the thing I like with this team heading in, they add guys through this draft like a Rasheem Green, if I can get that name out, 3rd-round draft pick. He could start for them on the right side of this defensive line. You get a guy in the 5th round like Shaquem Griffin, who we don't know what exactly his role is going to be on this team because he's not going to be a starter because they have KJ Wright. They've got guys that I like the Texas guy, Poona Ford. They've got Emmanuel Beal. They've got Trey Flowers in the cornerback situation. What do you expect from this defense, and will they take a step back this year, or is this youth going to help this team kind of stand tall on the defensive front?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I mean, they got to figure some things out, obviously, and so far, just with the offseason and starting with the preseason, they've had a few guys kind of banged up already, which is creating some issues. I mean, you mentioned Shaquem Griffin and KJ Wright being in front of him. The moment Wright's kind of banged up, so, I mean, that might force a rookie to have to start playing earlier, which is definitely not what you're going to want. So there's going to be some issues with that. I mean, and a big thing for them and the Seattle Seahawks, I think, when it comes to this youth and getting some of these new guys in here, not that it's completely new, but if the team starts to do poorly, do they finally pull the trigger and make that trade happen, getting rid of Earl Thomas, which once again is just going to let some of those veterans, some of those old Legion of Boom type of guys walk away and completely start a different era to the team. It's going to be interesting for sure because the Seattle Seahawks defense, they weren't a bad defense last year. I mean, I don't want to put that out there at all, and I don't think they're going to be a bad defense this year. They're just not of that same level they were before. They're closer to that average than they were before, where they were, the best defense in the NFL. They still have a great defense, total defense, passing defense. They still intercept and take away the ball all the time. The biggest weakness the defense has is against the running game. That's really what their big weakness is. But you lose a guy like Earl Thomas, maybe that passing defense does take a step back this coming year, or the takeaways go down a little bit. Something like that can have an impact, even of just having this guy who's been there for such a long time to help command and help lead the defense and show everybody the way it's supposed to be in Seattle.
Now, the thing I'm doing is I'm looking at the schedule, and home games are interesting for the Seahawks every single year because of the 12th man and how hard it is to play. But I look at their schedule, and I look at their home games, and I go, I don't know. Some of these home games, like the schedule makers did not do them any favors with their home games, because if I list them off, you play the Cowboys, who could be like a 9-17, 8-8, 9-7, but could be like a 10-6 team. You've got the Rams, who will most likely be a playoff team, but you play them twice a year, so you get them at home. Then you have the Chargers, who could be a playoff team, and you get a Charger team off the bye in that game. The Packers, who should be a lot better with Aaron Rodgers coming back. The Niners, the Cardinals, you're going to play them at home. But then the Vikings, who should be a playoff team this year, and the Chiefs, who, yes, Patrick Mahomes' rookie year, that one could be necessarily a weaker game because it's not the Chiefs of last year, and it's a new-look Chief team. But, look at the other games. Vikings, Packers, Rams, Chargers, and Cowboys. Those 5 games, those are ones where it's like in the past, I'd be like, oh, they're at home. I give the edge maybe to Seattle. In those 5 games, maybe except for 1 or 2 of them, I would maybe side with the opponents in those five home games.
Fortunately, they are this team wins at home. They struggle on the road more, historically at least. But you look at some of those road games then, like
and
playing
they're a lot easier.
Yeah, playing the Bears, playing the Lions, playing the Raiders. You have some easier situations for you to go into, and I think we're both a little bit down on the Panthers this coming year, so that one's there as well.
I was gonna say your toughest road games are week 1 against the Broncos and then week 10 against the Rams. Yeah. I would say are your toughest ones. The Panthers are just a toss-up of what are we gonna see this year.
So I mean, maybe they still do well enough, although do take a step back with the home games, but they do enough on the away games to where, hey, now all of a sudden you've won enough, you can get into the playoffs. I'm not 100% down on the Seattle Seahawks. I think 8-8 is probably a good spot to be. I would not be surprised if they were 9-7 again. The problem just once again comes down to the fact that 9-7 in the NFC is not necessarily good enough to guarantee you a spot in the playoffs.
This is not.
You're hoping that some other team has done worse than you.
This is not what it used to be like. Pete Carroll's like first year with the team, were 9-7, won you the division and got you into the playoffs. Those years are long gone where you're going to need double-digit wins, and even if you get double-digit wins,
there's no guarantee.
You might be left out of the playoffs. Just ask, like I said, the Lions, how that feels. But, I mean, I feel like the schedule is going to be the deciding factor for how the Seahawks do, because the way I look at how I have this season playing out for them, there's a chance that they could play 10 teams that finish with a winning record at the end of the year. And I'll be completely honest, of those 10 games, right now I got them 3-7 in those games. And I'll be completely honest, the Rams you're going to split. I don't have you beating the Vikings. I don't have you beating the Packers. The Chargers, maybe that one is a little bit closer, but I could see you guys losing that game, although I would lean maybe with you in that one. The Cowboys is another tough one, and like I don't see you guys beating the Broncos on the road. So it's like I look at those games for sure. 1, 2, 3 would be the Rams. 4 if you count Chargers or Cowboys, just one of those games, and 6 against the Broncos. Those are 6 right there. That means you have to sweep the rest of your games, and that might not even happen because I don't think this is going to be a team that goes 5-1 in the division. They're a team that will be like 2, 3, maybe 4 wins. Like if they go 4 wins in the division, that's really good, but they could be a 2, 3 win team in the NFC West this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for them in that case because being that 8-8, 9-7 level does not guarantee you anything. So you really have to win as much as you can because, 10 wins probably doesn't even win you your division.
No.
It's going to be a challenge for the Seahawks. They're really going to be in there competing for that wild card spot against, probably the Packers, the Falcons, maybe the Panthers, Cowboys. There's a lot of teams, 49ers, that are also going to be right in the thick of that. So it's going to be a challenge.
And the thing I will ask you is, let me ask you this. We haven't been able to ask this question often because, except for his first 2 years, and actually I was wrong. That first year with Pete Carroll, it wasn't a 9-7 team that got in. That was the infamous 7-9 team that got into the playoffs and lost to the Bears in the divisional round. Like I want to say, beat the Saints that year.
Yeah, that was the beast
in the wild card game, and then lost to the Bears. That was the year the Bears lost to the Packers in the championship game, right?
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to bring that up. Wanted to make sure I got that correct. But we haven't been able to ask this question because ever since those first 2 years, 11, 13, 12, 10, and 10 have been the win totals. After a 9-7 year last year, let's say this is a year that's below 500. Let's say it's anywhere below 500, even a 7-9 team for the Seahawks. If they finish 7-9 and below, are we next year talking about Pete Carroll's job security in Seattle?
I mean, I'm sure we would talk about it, but I don't expect Pete Carroll to go anywhere. he's done enough good for this team that they're not going to throw him out the first time something goes wrong. They're going to let him do this, and they're going to let him figure it out because there's a lot of good pieces to this team. If they underperform, that's all right. The only reason I can see maybe Pete Carroll being shipped out of town is similar to last year. The locker room is what started to fall apart, but they got rid of a lot of those guys. You know, they had issues, and Richard Sherman is still an issue talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Seattle Seahawks, and all the locker room issues and how it just doesn't feel the same, man. They got rid of those guys, but the only reason I can see him being shipped out right now or sent packing is if they just completely lose the locker room. That's the only thing. Even or they go 0-16. But you know, I mean, even if they win 6 games, I still think he's going to be here.
I mean, Hugh Jackson's not the coach.
Yeah,
so they're not going to go 0-16.
Somehow. But yeah, I definitely don't expect him to be going anywhere right now.
Marinelli was the coach of the Lions when they went 0-16, right?
Yep. Amazing defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Head coach, not so much.
The thing that I think with Pete Carroll, and this is just my belief with it, is I don't think Pete Carroll will be fired in Seattle. If he is no longer the Seattle coach, he will leave on his own. But that's just what Pete Carroll does. Like, Pete Carroll will leave you. You will not fire Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll hurts you. You don't hurt Pete Carroll.
Exactly. But before we move on to the Rams, any final thoughts you have about the Seattle Seahawks?
No, just that the Seattle Seahawks are... It's tough with them because they're not that sure thing that they used to be.
No.
And we just kind of have to be there while they transition into a new era post-Legion of Boom.
It's exact. I think of what I hear every time I hear Colin Cowherd talk about the Golden State Warriors now. Dynasties never last forever. And I know Tom Brady fans are going, ha ha ha, what about us? Where you're not winning 3 back-to-back-to-back Super Bowls every year like you used to. Dynasties never last forever. The Seattle Seahawk dynasty, as we were looking at it with Super Bowl appearances and how good they were, it looks like that is the Legion of Boom dynasty is now ending, and
Marshawn being gone, and you know, and they're still. I mean, they still went to the playoffs 5 years in a row. With last year being the first time since 2011 they didn't go to the playoff game. So they've had success even in years that are a little bit of a down. Last year was kind of an anomaly, and they were still second in the division.
Yeah. I see this team being the window that I will give them is 7 to 9 wins. That is what I see for this team, where they will be just right there, middle of the road, miss out on the playoffs in the NFC, because like we've said ad nauseum, you're going to need double-digit wins to get into the playoffs, and you might not get in even with double-digit wins. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. What do you think about the Seahawks this year? What do you like? What do you don't like? What were we right about? What were we wrong about? And how many wins do you have for them at the end of the year? Let us know what you think down below in that comment section.